Tonight, we talk about the crime session that begins on Monday. I will introduce you to some fantastic software that's coming to Baton Rouge, and 225 Fest is on the way. We got the scoop. Roll it, Kirk. Well, the special session is going to be beginning this Monday, and it's a crime session. Governor Landry had a lot of things that he promised voters in his run-up to becoming governor, and one of them was address public safety. John Cuvion with JMC Analytics is here with me, and JC, the crime session is on Monday. 24 items,
yes,
all dealing with public safety or issues of people on the inside of the system or recently out of the system. What's your expectation?
So the way I look at the crime session is this: even though there are 24 items on the special session call and 21 bills that have thus far been filed, you can really boil the special session down into two parts.
All right.
The first will be Jeff Landry's campaign was basically what I wisecracked was quote unquote all crime all the time.
Right.
And so this special session to me is just a manifestation of passing legislation such as, you know, increasing the penalties for carjacking, different ways of execution, tougher parole and things like that. That to me is part of kind of fulfilling his campaign pledges. The other thing, which is a broader theme, but some of it is applicable for the special session, is anything that former Governor Edwards vetoed that was near and dear to the Republicans' hearts, they're going to get passed this year. A prime example of that is the so-called constitutional carry bill. That is one of the items, not just in the special session call, but as one of the, well, technically two of the bills being filed, since you have identical bills in the House and Senate.
So, you know, you mentioned that one. There's another one that deals with immunity for law enforcement officers, and not just law enforcement officers, they call it peacekeepers.
Yes.
And the agencies that hire them. There's going to be some controversy around that. Talk a little bit about that one.
So the way I look at those kinds of bills is this is one of those things where on one side you have the Republicans who are going to favor it. On the other side, it's going to be interesting to see what the police chiefs, the sheriffs, and other law enforcement personnel did, because that was the political cover former Governor Edwards used when he had vetoed similar bills in the past was, well, hey, the police chiefs don't want it, therefore I don't want it. Well, now that you have a Republican governor, it'll be interesting to see if the police chiefs, sheriffs, and other law enforcement personnel are going to want to cut a deal versus oppose this bill outright.
Let's talk about the agenda item that deals with juveniles and being able to lower the age and then also be able to get access to some of those records.
So basically the way I see that is one of several items that perhaps back when criminal justice reform was in vogue a couple of terms ago, there were some things that were passed that perhaps may have been a bit too lenient. Now I would say between the fact that time has passed, number one, and number two, you have a Republican governor, I think an argument can be made that the tide is going to start turning in the other way in terms of toughening things back up.
So, you know, here's the thing, man. Across our communities, both in the more affluent areas and in areas where crime is out of control, there's one area of agreement. Something has to be done.
Right.
I can tell people who may not believe this, but when you go into some of these poor communities, they want tougher laws. They want stronger punishments because they see the same guys getting out over and over and over again, doing it over and over again. So I don't think there's going to be as much backlash from, say, inner city communities as some may assume, because they're the ones who are living under the thumb of this violence.
Right. And in fact, what's interesting is I noticed that in the proposals that Governor Landry has for expanding the police presence in New Orleans, specifically the state troopers, how quickly Mayor Cantrell came on board. So I think that's kind of a realization that that's one of those issues you cannot play opponent to, because the crime problem is just so pervasive here in our state.
Man, and they're younger and younger. And again, I think people want to see something done. Now, I'm a firm believer in investment as much as enforcement, but you got to do the enforcement part too. I got about 90 seconds left. Let's talk about what you think will be a surprise in this small session.
I guess the surprise would be if you're talking about the expectations for how many of the items actually pass.
Should be all of them, right?
It should be, but bills are a funny thing, especially if you have, say, a group of DAs or sheriffs or police chiefs who come out and oppose it. Then strange things can happen to the bill. So I never assumed that every single bill that is currently going to be heard is going to be passed. They're going to have some that will get watered down or stalled, or maybe they might get deferred to the next session.
Got about a minute. What about the death penalty one, dealing with how we do it, and this one is something people don't talk about a lot.
Right.
But what about that?
My attitude is, given how infrequently it's been utilized, I think the tide's going to start turning on that as well.
Yeah. You think there will be another crime session? Because I do.
Theoretically, but you know, one of the things that I think is going to be a painful lesson this year, as was in 2018, is you cannot special session legislators to death. There's something called a regular session, which to me is the vehicle by which you should try to get things passed.
Fiscal this year, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I think it's a good thing that the conversation about public safety is happening,
right.
And let's hope that they can be constructive, but please don't be deceived. He's got a super majority. Most of what he wants he's going to be able to get.
Correct.
Quickly, 10 seconds, how can people find you?
I'm on Twitter, well, the application formerly known as Twitter, at WinWithJMC, winwithjmc.com, and I'm constantly on social media posting about various things related to our elections.
He is the pollster if you're wanting to know what's happening around our community. John Cuvion is the guy. Up next, I want to introduce you to some technology that may have been essential in stopping some of what took place in Houston last week. The technology is coming to Baton Rouge, and the people behind it will talk about it with you next.
It's the best of both worlds. Baton Rouge's best selection of premium cigars and an unparalleled cigar lounge experience. Located in Town Center, it's Don Juan Cigar Company and Don Juan Cigar Bar. Walk into our amazing humidor at Don Juan Cigar Company, then walk next door and experience the plush atmosphere of Don Juan Cigar Bar. Come see why we are Baton Rouge's cigar and good time authority. Don Juan Cigar Company and Don Juan Cigar Bar.
So last weekend, we were reminded again about the scourge of mass shootings across our country. We've seen them just really be out of control, particularly in churches and in schools, which is almost impossible to believe. But there is software that addresses where a gunman, woman, would be inside of a place. And that technology is known as Zero Eyes. A couple of weeks ago, the Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice Foundation announced a collaboration with Zero Eyes to bring the software to Baton Rouge and deploy it across our parish. Joining me now is Burgess Nichols with Zero Eyes, a company started in 2018. Burgess, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you, Clay.
So it's good to have you on, man. Let's talk a little bit about why you started Zero Eyes.
Sure. So the founder started Zero Eyes back in 2018, and that was after the Parkland high school shooting, which we just went through the anniversary of yesterday. And the whole goal was to utilize existing security cameras to get ahead of the active shooter threat. We noticed that there's, about 100 million security cameras across the United States, and very few of those are being used in a proactive manner. So the founders came together and said, well, let's utilize them in a way that we can take a proactive position and detect firearms once they're brandished. And so that's when they came up with Zero Eyes back in 2018. Now the whole goal of the company is to use existing security cameras, and when a firearm is brandished, we get a detection, and that's reviewed by our 24/7, 365 operations center, of which we have 2. Those are staffed around the clock. They review the detection, they verify it's a true firearm, and then they send it to the end user and local law enforcement.
So let's talk a little bit about how you referenced some of it, starting back in 2018, the 2 call centers, one in Pennsylvania, the other one in Honolulu, and how you communicate with law enforcement. People are going to have the opportunity in the next segment to actually see the technology in operation, but let's talk about vetting it to make certain that A, you did not have any false positives, and that you could be as efficient as possible in getting information to law enforcement.
Absolutely. So that's a critical part of what we do as a company. So when that detection of the firearm comes across our monitors platforms, they review to verify to make sure that it's a true firearm. If it's a false positive or a toy gun or something that resembles a firearm, they don't dispatch that to the end user. They're verifying the firearm is true, and then they're dispatching it to local law enforcement. And what they're dispatching is they're able to dispatch location as well as an image. So now the end user now knows who is carrying the firearm and what the location is, so that law enforcement and security can vector directly to that threat.
So one of the things that we can talk about, and people will see the demonstration, when we chatted about this before, you were able to list a few examples of a gunman being on the grounds of either a school or a building, and had this technology been available, they would have been able to know, they being law enforcement, would have been able to know where the person was, and that instructs their approach as they get there. Talk about that a little bit.
Exactly. And so what we are, we're a situation awareness tool play. So when we're able to provide that actionable intel, such as, I'll give you an example. We had one out in New Mexico where we had a young lady with a firearm who brandished it directly under field of view of a security camera that she didn't know Zero Eyes was on. And we got the detection. We were able to dispatch that. A school resource officer was able to show up on site within a minute and apprehend that young lady. So it's a situational awareness tool that provides actionable intelligence to law enforcement.
I mean, think about it. Having law enforcement being alerted to a gunman on the grounds, knowing where they are, they know how to approach. A couple of things I want to get into in about a minute and a half before we go to break and come back. When we announced it here, I heard questions about civil liberties. And I said, Burgess, that this technology does not prohibit a person from having a gun anywhere he or she would be allowed to have it anyway. It's just a tool used to address an issue where someone is brandishing a weapon where they should not have it. 30 seconds. Speak to that just a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Clay, our goal is not to infringe on anyone's rights, right? What we're trying to do, what we do, is we identify the brandished firearm. So whether you're a good actor or a bad actor, you have a firearm pulled in a place where firearms should not be pulled out, we get the detection, we will dispatch that. And that's really important to the human in the loop to be able to communicate the context of a situation as well.
Well, look, I'm looking forward to having people see the demonstration in real time, and that's what we're going to do next. You'll actually see how it works, how fast it works, and then Burgess will be able to talk through what that looks like. We'll also explain to you what the agreement with the Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice Foundation is and how you could see this technology on the streets of Baton Rouge as soon as next month. But I also want to remind you about the podcast at podcast225.com. Today, we're actually recording the show here in the studios of WAFB, and my guests on the show will be Matt Williams and Liz Coe. We'll talk a little bit about how this whole thing came together with the Clay Young Show coming to WAFB, and some ideas I have about what's on the way for the show, and just really talking about why media in this town is so essential to the direction of where our community is going. That's podcast225.com on the Apple Podcast app. You'll also be able to see it at WAFB.com. So we're sharing all the stuff here. But next, a live demonstration of how Zero Eyes works. You'll be able to see how this technology will help our community. Can't wait to show it to you, and we will do that next right here on The Clay Young Show. So in our last segment, you got a chance to hear the history of Zero Eyes. In this segment, I want you to see it in action. Burgess Nichols is here with us again. Burgess, I've seen this a few times, and every time I see it, it's really amazing. We'll turn it over to you to be able to demonstrate to us. And we've shared the screen with Burgess. Take it away.
Great. Thank you very much, Clay. Alyssa, can you pull up the demo screen? So Clay, as you've seen before, this is our demo. This is our dispatch screen. So this is what our monitoring team sees on a day-to-day basis. They're looking at a screen that says none. We don't have access to live video feeds. Our analytic pulls a stream from a camera, and then it continuously analyzes the frames to look for a detection of a firearm. Once we get a firearm detected, our monitors look at it and they verify it's a true firearm. And then they click that button in the bottom left that says dispatch. And once they do that, what ends up happening is it gets sent to the end user. Now, another important part about this screen is you see the bottom right, you see false positive. This is where our human in the loop is so important in this process. They're able to review the detection that comes across the platform prior to sending it to local law enforcement or on-site security. Now, the real importance of that, Clay, is to understand context as well as we don't want to send a false positive to an end user, right? We don't do that. We don't want to make an event out of a non-event. Now, Alyssa, we can switch over to the client side screen, please. So as you see right now, Clay, there is no detection that's populated on the screen. That's because we haven't had anyone walk in front of the camera for this demo. But on the left side of the screen, what you see is a mapping functionality. And Alyssa, if you zoom out on that map, please. This is our office headquarters. and it's about 800,000 square feet. Now, all those pin drops you see there are areas we have Zero Eyes on security cameras. But if you see the entrance down at the lower part of the building, that is approximately a quarter of a mile from the back of our office building. So if law enforcement were to show up, they would go to the front of the building and have to make their way back to where the potential event would be, where we have Zero Eyes. So the criticality of having that geographic location of where the actual individual is with the firearm is paramount when it comes to actually actioning the alerts that Zero Eyes sends. So if you can go back out, please, Alyssa, to the client side. So what we're going to do now, Clay, is we're going to have someone walk through our demo environment with a brandished firearm and begin to get detections. Alyssa, who is running the demo here, will act as our monitor, and once the detection is made, she'll dispatch that. As you see right there, instantaneously, we had one of our employees pull out a firearm, detection, dispatch. That's all within less than 3 seconds.
Wow.
He's walking around carrying it with different carry configurations. You can see it's a small black handgun. But what do we have here is we have actionable information, right? Each time that this button dispatch is pressed, the end user and law enforcement receives the alert with the image and an understanding of what type of weapon system that individual is carrying. Now, she'll continue to dispatch all these alerts, and you can see the analytic is focused specifically on the firearm, not on anything else, not on what he's wearing, not on skin tone, on anything like that. It's focused specifically on that brandished firearm. So we'll continue to get these detections, and we'll dispatch them. And if we can jump over to the client page, please, Alyssa. So what you're seeing now is those pin drops are red and a darker blue. The red ones indicate a detection that was received in less than 1 minute ago. The bouncing one is the most recent location that corresponds with the image on the right side. And this is what the end user of law enforcement sees.
Wow.
So as you can see, Clay, the importance of having that geographic functioning along with the actual image being sent, now you're arming individuals with information. So often in these situations, there is a lack of clarity in terms of who they're looking for, what type of weapon system they're carrying, and where that person is. So that's the real value proposition of what we bring with Zero Eyes using existing security cameras.
I think it's pretty fantastic, and as people can see, you can see where the person is within the building, and when that information is given to law enforcement, they know where to approach to minimize the threat to others in the building, but also clearly be able to identify and hopefully neutralize what the threat is. So I want to go quickly here in about a minute and a half of what we have left, Burgess. The Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice Foundation entered into an agreement with Zero Eyes to donate $20,000, which purchases about 20 locations for this software. The software is $50 per camera per month, a 2-year commitment. After a certain amount of cameras have been purchased or software has been purchased, the price decreases. We got about a minute. Quickly tell us why this partnership is so important to you guys.
Yeah, so Clay, thank you very much. We're honored to partner with the PageRight's Public Safety Initiative. What our main goal as a company, right, is to address public safety concerns, get ahead of active shooter and gun violence events. So partnering with the PageRight Initiative is extremely important to us. Very proud to be doing it, and as we expand, as you mentioned, we'll provide more coverage for Baton Rouge and it's on community safety.
Well, look, we appreciate it. You can learn more about the software at zeroeyes.com, zeroeyes.com. And when we announce where the software is going to be deployed, we'll have Burgess back. Burgess, thank you, brother. I appreciate the time.
Thanks a lot, Clay. Appreciate it.
All right, there's a community event happening in District 10. You can learn more about a program helping young people by calling the Leo S. Butler Center. The number is on your screen. It's the Hands on Our Children program, and we want to really promote and support anything that deals with kids who are in areas that require the attention. Up next, 225 Fest takes place in just over a week, and the force behind 225 Fest will be joining us in our final segment. Myra Richardson will be here, and I'm going to try to avoid being given a job or something at 225 Fest. It is a celebration of Baton Rouge, a love letter to Baton Rouge from Baton Rouge, and we've got all the details on 225 Fest. Second year, right?
Second year.
Second year. We'll tell you about that. You can check out also, remember, the podcast later on, podcast225.com. Back in just a moment. So as we said to you, 225 Fest is taking place next weekend on Sunday, February 25th. There's a website, 225fest.com. You can log on to the site to find out how you can, yes, order your t-shirt or find out more details about the event. Speaking of which, Myra Richardson is here. She is the force behind the fest. Where'd this idea come from?
Wow, 225 Fest really came in 2022, and I just heard so many people who, were down about the pandemic, that were talking bad about our city, and I thought to myself that 225 Day was something that started on social media, and it was something that people found an opportunity to show what they loved about our city, and I wish that people would do that year round. So I wanted to take it from the internet into real life, and that's how we curated 225 Fest, an opportunity for us to celebrate culture in the capital region, and not just show ourselves, but show the country the type of city that we are, and really step into who we're meant to be.
I love the idea of us talking positively about Baton Rouge because we spend so much time tearing the city down. So tell us a little bit about what happens at the fest.
Well, people can remember a lot of the amazing things that happened last year. We had food trucks, we had vendors, we had panel discussions, we had live performances, and we're bringing all of that back, but we've taken it up a notch. We have an expanded performance line with the Southern University Human Jukebox being our halftime show. We have several band performances that will be there. We have a senior zone in partnership with the Council on Aging, and we have over 30 sponsors, including yourself, who have stepped up to make this event so amazing and really bring things like a live cooking demonstration with 3 Louisiana chefs who are all been featured on national news networks. It's just really something for everybody. There's a kid zone, there's a senior zone, there's really something no matter what your age is, no matter what you care about, whether you want to tour the Capitol Park Museum and learn more about Baton Rouge, or if you want to come support some local businesses.
This is such an amazing event, and I think you find that people are so ready to support you in it because most of the business here want us to do that. They want us to celebrate the city.
Yeah, I tell people often that it's not about me and it's not about the event. People want to see the good in Baton Rouge. People want to see themselves reflected positively, and ultimately we want our stories told in a way that we can remember Baton Rouge positively. And I think as this city continues to grow, as we continue to expand, and as we continue to write the next chapter of our community, 225 Fest hopes to be a part of that, and continue to really show our community that we can love on one another, we can love on our community, and 225 Fest is the perfect day, whether you are returning from Atlanta or DC. We've gotten so many comments from people saying, I'm coming home. They didn't come to Mardi Gras, but they're coming back home to Baton Rouge just for 225 Day. And ultimately, we want 225 Fest and 225 Day to be the homecoming for the city, that people come home and really celebrate the things that they love. And whether you're here and you want to find something more to love about our city, this is the day to do that.
So you can log on, you saw the website, 225fest.com. Log on, find out what's happening at the event. Go out there. I'm going to be out there. I think I'm just going to be out there, right? Not doing anything, right?
Not today, not today.
Okay, cool.
We're keeping it low maintenance, low maintenance.
All right, listen, quick shout out to the folks in New Roads who had us over there for Mardi Gras this year. They had, Jay Grimes was there. I can confirm he can drive a pickup truck. Wow. And I had the honor of being the Grand Marshal in this year's parade, the 102nd community crew of Carnival deal there. It was fantastic. Looked like about 100,000 people out there, so it was fantastic. Shout out to everybody. The day was amazing. The weather was fantastic. Even got a bite to eat while I was out there, so thanks to the folks over in New Roads. And listen, next week, we're going to talk with Mayor President Sharon Weston Broome. She recently announced her candidacy for re-election in her 3rd term. We'll talk about crime, politics, the infrastructure that's happening in Baton Rouge. And again, don't forget, 225fest.com, 225fest.com. See you next week. Y'all have a great one.